Instant gratification is somewhat of a plague on the human condition. Now, those of us who have somewhat privileged backgrounds, I myself grew up having much more money than the vast majority of the human race on this planet. Um, my parents can help me with college. And a lot of the time, I expect things to happen much more easily than they do because I'm very much privileged. Now, when I say privileged, I'm not rich by any means. I mean, being middle class in the United States, relatively speaking, is basically rich around the world. And a lot of people that are just above the area of middle class that I'm at, just around that area, or just even just below, a lot of us do not have a concept of what it really takes to make a life, to completely put together brick by brick a life that you have made and that you live yourself. Now, this has hindered me along the spiritual path. I'm at a point where I'm much more realistic as far as what I need to do in order to get to where I want to be as far as along my spiritual path. But getting here was extremely difficult because I had that expectation to have instant gratification. Now, as far as spiritual paths go, I once met a man that said, all you have to do is accept that Jesus Christ is the one Son of God and that he is your Savior, and try to stay away from sin, then you'll go to heaven forever and you don't have to do anything else. I think that is too much to expect out of a spiritual path or the ultimate truth about this universe and all the universes, that it's that easy, because it is much more difficult. Attaining various levels of consciousness, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher for me. And, I'm not on a high level of consciousness, but as I've progressed, I've started to realize how much work it takes to not necessarily attain levels of consciousness, but to take apart the programming that was basically put into me, put into who I am, down to the very fabric of how I see the world. And this is true for the vast majority of people out there. A lot of people like me as well, getting away a little bit from the spiritual path. A lot of people like me who have had privileges and, access to medical care, access to school, access to living in a safe neighborhood. A lot of us have this instant gratification expectation that kind of plays into drugs and alcohol. We want to, feel that pleasure and not have to pay for it because we're so used to not paying for things a lot of the time. And, it took a long time for me to realize this about myself, and this was years back. Now I work for the person that I am, but this is kind of what I expected from the world. And a lot of people, middle-class people in the United States, fall into drugs and alcohol because of that instant gratification. They don't realize what they have to pay for it. The payment is terrible. The payment is that it takes a piece of your life and basically makes it function to gain drugs and alcohol, which is a terrible thing. Now, instant gratification can play into the hands of people who don't have anything, who are very, very poor. And, the idea of, okay, this is a stereotypical idea, but let's talk about somebody who's very, very poor in Russia, for instance. Let's say Russia or Eastern Europe. Okay, if I rob this one place, then I'll have enough money to pay the rent for months. I'll be able to buy whatever I want for months, and that'll set me up for a while to where I don't really have to think about what will happen after that. So you go into a place, try to rob it, and then you have the chance of going to jail. You have the guilty conscience, hopefully, that you have done this crime and that you have traumatized these people, if not hurt or killed somebody. And the payment, the karmic payment, and just the subconscious, even if you don't believe in karma, the subconscious payment that weighed on your soul is far greater than even the punishment that you would get from the prison system in whatever country. Even if you're just sent to jail and you weren't killed or anything like that, the karmic and subconscious payment for a crime like that, traumatizing other people, for no reason other than you wanted to have easy money for a certain amount of time, and you wouldn't have to think about, really working hard and hard and hard. And a lot of people who are poor in different countries, they simply don't have the opportunities for jobs. They don't have the opportunities for the kind of even the basic minimum wage that we have in the United States. They don't have the opportunities to live in neighborhoods that have even police. They don't have opportunities to be shown a pathway out of their situation. So instant gratification seems to be kind of ingrained in society, but really it always has, and it is to a certain extent, but the vast majority of instant gratification is a personal philosophy, how you approach different things. Now, it's much easier for me in my situation in life to approach instant gratification and say, okay, I've learned this and that, and I'm all right. But a lot of people, when they learn that, okay, I shouldn't just try to take from other people, I shouldn't just try to expect everything immediately, and people who have to build their life brick by brick, because let's say they're thrown out of their parents' place, their parents can't even afford them, they have to live on the streets, the government can't afford to take care of them. People like that have to build their life brick by brick, and still choose to not have instant gratification of doing any crime or just trying to get easy money. Those people are amazing, because they understand that being a human being without instant gratification makes you a wondrous person. It makes you a titan in the societal scale, even if most people look down on you because you've built your life up and you're still poor. You are still a titan on the philosophical, moral, and karmic scale that Dharma itself, that rules the cosmos. You won't get media attention. You won't be given opportunities because you build your life like this, because you're so focused on the right path that you're not worried about how hard it will be to get there. The vast majority of people who do this will not be able to just take an opportunity that's handed out to them, because the opportunity most likely will still not come. The opportunity either from the government just giving you a grant, giving you a scholarship, a charity helping you out. In most parts of the world, charity there's too much poverty, there's too much pain for charity to take care of. So instant gratification is something that we also have to fight in our spiritual life. Now, what I was just talking about is still spiritual. I mean, everything ultimately is spiritual to varying degrees, but the spirituality that I'm talking about now is that I still have problems in my spiritual life, and most people do actually, expecting God's, their connection to God, their understanding of the truth that God has passed down in whatever scriptures they have, or whatever combinations of teachings that, kind of like me, where I combine different systems, but I'm Hindu, so I can do that, and it doesn't really go against Hinduism. There's nothing that can really go against Hinduism. There's atheist Hindus, and that doesn't mean that they're not Hindu. It's more of a culture of sharing information about consciousness and trying to get to the truth of the universe. That's really what Hinduism is. But, whatever teachings that you have in the vast majority of spiritual and religious teachings, it will talk about, you do this, this, and this, and you'll get connection to God. Through the Abrahamic faiths, it's more of an intermediary thing through Jesus Christ, and more blind faith, if you understand what I'm saying. But in Hinduism, it's more actual experience, but you also have to work for that experience, that connection. So one is working through faith, and even in Hinduism, you can still work through faith, through bhakti, but for the sake of brevity, we'll say, there's ways to work towards a connection with God, or a healthy soul, you can say. And it seems very easy in the scriptures and in the spiritual and religious texts, but it really isn't. It's very difficult. In order to really institute the most simplistic virtues, you have to make your understanding and your life more simplistic. Now, our lives are incredibly complicated, far too complicated, far more complicated than they have to be. Now, when I say complicated, I mean we do cartwheels in order to justify the vast majority of what we do. That doesn't mean everything is either a virtue or a sin. There's far more gray ground than that. But we like to convince ourselves that we're we're practicing well. And I find myself doing it, that I'll make excuses for why I didn't do that puja or meditate, and I'll make excuses to try to make myself feel more spiritual than I am, and I catch myself now. And we do this in society. You know, I'm a good father because, let's just take a random father example. I'm a good father. I should provide for my family. I mean, maybe, and this is a bad example. This is not every father, or even, you know, whatever percentage. But, you know, every now and then my wife or kids don't listen to me, so I hit them. But, I mean, that only teaches them, right? So, I mean, as long as I provide for them, I'm still a good father. That is an example of a very bad person, of course, but an example of trying to convince yourself that you're good, that despite what you have done, you're still good. Now, for most of us, it's not that extreme to where you're hitting your kids or your wife or your spouse or abusing them even verbally. It's not that extreme for most of us. But we have to look at ourselves from a third-person point of view, with logic, with compassion, and with detachment. When we look at our path and ourselves through these three filters, logic, compassion, and detachment, then it gives us a better perspective on how we're practicing the path that we have chosen, and we compare it to the path that we basically have picked out through, you know, trial and error, or through trying to understand and, you know, studying all the different spiritual faiths and religions. I did that, but I mean, I understand that most people don't, but comparing it regardless to the scriptures, to the practices that you're supposed to do, and really look at if you're living up to that. So don't allow yourself to expect instant gratification in either your spiritual, societal, or moral life, because it doesn't come. You have to work for it. And there are very many people on this planet that have worked harder for it than me. And I'm willing to admit that. And I own up to the fact that I've been very privileged, because being middle class, once again, in the United States, is probably, I mean, that's richer than the vast majority of the human race. But I've had my own problems. You know, I've worked through, I'm still working through, because you never get rid of schizophrenia, but I'm still working through it, still trying to understand it, still working through these emotions that are attached to it and my experiences. But, you know, I have my own problems. Don't get me wrong. But I do appreciate the fact that there are wondrous people out there who work even harder than me and gain even more than me. And I look up to those people, no matter how others look down upon them. But thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to ask me a question or make a statement, feel free to shoot it down in the comment section below. And I hope to see all of you in the future. And don't judge yourself too harshly, but look at yourself realistically. Thank you very much.